Well, hey, I caught me by surprise here. I was having problems connecting, and all of a sudden I see it said I didn't have a connection, and then all of a sudden it says I do have a connection. And welcome! It's showtime. It's time for Monday Mastery, and I'm author and dating coach Rick Soderbeer, and I'm here to answer your questions about dating and relationships. But today's topic is about online dating and some of the do's and don'ts and some of the attitudes that people have, and just kind of the I've been running some ads on Facebook, and let me turn that upside down so I'm not distracted by my phone. I've been running some ads on Facebook and for a webinar I've got coming up on Wednesday, and it's actually this webinar. There we go. It's the 5 biggest dating and relationship mistakes. And so many people assume that one of those mistakes is online dating, but it's not even in the conversation in that particular in this particular webinar. It might be, but it as an extra bonus, but in the content, it's not even part of it. And I've just received so many comments about how terrible online dating is, and how many scammers there are out there, and lack of response and lack of intelligence, and just any number of things. So anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and but this will be my last broadcast from northern Wisconsin. These are the trees that I'm starting to the colors in the trees that I'm starting to see. I went and visited my folks in the cemetery this weekend, and the cemetery in Ironwood is just an absolutely gorgeous place in the fall because they have a lot of maple trees and a lot of color. And it was just, and it's not quite peak color here yet. Peak color is late, so there's still a lot of yellows and some oranges and a few bright reds, but it's a beautiful time of the year, and as part of the year up here, or the part of the year that I spend up here, I really enjoy the summer because it gets into the 70s and 80s, but in the fall the colors are just phenomenal. So let me catch here. Hey, Addie, thanks for joining in. Terry, it's been a while. I was just thinking about you today, and wondering how you're doing. Um, Terry says, you live in a cemetery? No, my parents do. So, no, my parents have both passed away, and I periodically go and say hi to them, and just check out their sites and make sure they're clean, and there's no mold growing on them. I try to keep them up and fresh, and my sister does too. She takes care of the flowers and whatnot in the summer, but it's just one of those things that I like to stop in and say hi. And if you notice, I've got a new background, and it just got that up here this week. Addie, be nice. Addie says Terry probably found a beau and didn't need us anymore. That's something we can chat on over in the Dating Made Simple Academy Facebook group, and Terry, if there's something you need to tell us, you can share with us over there. So anyway, um, so I hope you all had a great week last week and a wonderful weekend. We had Friday was absolutely gorgeous here. It was almost 80 degrees. And then Saturday kind of dropped off to 56, and Sunday was not much better. Today was gorgeous, 72 degrees, and by the weekend, which will be a travel weekend for me, and uh, it will. I'm expecting to have 32 or 34 to 30, 32 to 34 degrees in the morning, and so it's time to start heading south. So I'll be in Kansas City next week. So Addie, I hope you're coming to the meetup group. It'll be at Paul and Jack's. on the north in the Northland. So for all of those of you that are in the Kansas City area, I hope you'll come up to Paul and Jack's on Tuesday at 5:30 to 8:30, and we'll just socialize, have a happy hour, and they've got some great food specials. So anyway, that being said, let's dive into today's topic. Like I said at the beginning of the program, um, I've been running ads for my webinar this coming Wednesday, and there have been just a bunch of people that have commented about online dating, and the webinar has nothing to do with online dating. It has to do with other critical mistakes that most of us have made, if not all of us, and it's the comments about online dating and the attitude, and I'm sure all of you have come across friends or Facebook acquaintances that have posted things, and there's just a very negative air to their comments, and it's like, oh, it's just like, oh, stay away. And there to a limited extent, I can kind of frame the conversation a little differently, or move the conversation a little differently. But I even had one woman accuse me of trying to sell her something when I mentioned that online dating can be frustrating, but it can be a great source of meeting people. But it takes time and patience. And she accused me of, "Hey, Stephen, thanks for joining in. Steven is on the road again, and I miss my buddy here. I could look out across the parking lot or across the street and see what he's up to. I could spy on him." And he didn't know that. And because I'm the nosy neighbor, and but I miss you, buddy, and hope to get to see you this winter sometime down south. And very good point. Terry says too much negativity everywhere these days, and that's so true. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining in. Phil's joining us from Olathe, and hope to get to see you at one of the meetup groups while I'm there. I'll be in the metro area for about 6 weeks. But anyway, there's just so much negativity, and I pointed out to this one particular woman that online dating is simply a tool. It can be frustrating. It can be overwhelming if you let it. And she just came back at me and said, "Well, that sounds like a you're trying to sell." In essence, she thought I was trying to sell something, or to sell her something, or to try to hit on her, which I was not doing in either case. And I just laughed, and I haven't heard back from her since. But there are people make so many assumptions about so many things without knowing all the details. And online dating is no different. You just look at all of the different profiles. Look at all of the different things that people say, that different things that they post, and you're going to be attracted to some, and you're not going to be attracted to others. But one of the big comments, or one of the big gripes, as I'd say, were about not getting a response back when you send an email to somebody. When you like their profile, send them a like, and you send them an email, and you don't get a response. Well, you have to remember a couple of different things about online dating, whether it's Match or Zoosk or any other site, especially if they're paid sites. It's only the paid members that get to see your likes and get to receive your emails. You have to you have to be a subscribing member to be able to communicate with others. And what most people forget is that not everybody they see online is a subscribing member. How many of you, and raise your hand, or just say yes, how many of you have filled out a profile online and not paid or not been a subscribing member? And what you know what did that do for you? Terry says, I hear so many women block a guy after texting a week and they didn't get a text for 2 days. Some people jump the gun. Well, and Terry, that's a great observation. That's a Hey Geneva, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. Terry, that's a great observation, and it goes a lot to setting expectations when you start talking to somebody. And Terry says that she's been on and not been a paying member. So and I'm assuming others of you have. I know I have. I've signed up for sites and want to see, kind of get a feel for what the site is like before I pay. And when you do that, you can take and see who's there, but you can't communicate, and they can't communicate with you. So it's a double-edged sword, that you can get on and see, but you can't connect with anybody. So you have to understand that a large portion of people that are online may not be getting your email simply for the fact that they're not paid members. Or they may have unsubscribed and just never took their profile down. And I know there are several outlets and Match is kind of notorious for this, that you can hide your profile, but they can put it back up, and they'll tell you that you have likes, you have messages. And I have gotten sucked into that several times, only to find that it's Match has sent me messages and within the site. And there might be some likes, but it's like, oh no, I didn't want to see those people. They have nothing in common with me, or I'm not attracted. And it's just a problem. So you have to be aware of some of the mechanics of online dating, and some of the downfalls. And I still think at this point one of the best sites overall is a site called Bumble. And both men and women sign up, and you swipe left or swipe right. I mean, you can look at the profile and get a thumbnail sketch, but you still have to be a paying member to be able to talk to people. But it allows guys to like women, but the woman has to make the first contact. Men cannot make the contact if there hasn't been a mutual like. And Terry said, when I cancel a membership, I take down my photos and erase my profile before canceling and deleting. Absolutely, that's a perfect way of doing it. That you delete your profile completely. That way, you can't be suckered back in by somewhat. And I hate to call them deceptive, but there's somewhat, in my opinion, somewhat dubious way of teasing you or tormenting you to come back. Oh, somebody's liked me. Somebody sent me. Well, for me, it's most of the time it's Rick, come back. We'll give you 50% off for your first month or whatever it is. Addie says, Match went up in price since I last went on. Not quite ready to commit to pay just yet. And that's fine. Addie, that's you have to watch your budget. Everybody has to watch their budget, especially in this day and age. And that's why I encourage people to just not invest in more than one or two sites, and it because it can be overwhelming. And what you'll find is that if you decide, well, Match isn't working for me, so I'll go to Zeus, or I'll go to Our Time, or I'll go to Silver Singles, or whatever it is, and hot Asian women for the guys, whatever it is. Uh, yeah, unless you start getting into some of those obscure sites, all of the domestic sites are going to carry a lot of the same people. You're going to see, because everybody thinks the same thing. Well, if I'm not finding anybody on Match, I'm going to go over to Zeus, or I'm going to go over to Silver Singles. Well, guess what? Everybody else has gone there too. So, I mean, you'll see a little bit of variation from site to site, but you will see a lot of common profiles. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hey, I'm getting a bit of a warning here. Is everybody hearing me okay and seeing me okay? I'm getting a weak internet signal, and I just want to make sure that everything is good on your end. So it hasn't, nothing's changed on my end. I can still hear myself and I can still see myself. So. And Steven, oh, grow up. I have a ball meeting new people. Women are lots of fun. I am having a wonderful time with a lady that set some restrictions on what she wanted in a relationship. And I respect her thoughts. We are both admitting at this point we like each other. Such a cool feeling. Awesome. That's great, Steven. And Terry says, I can hear. Okay, good. I just every once in a while I get a little internet warning here, or a signal warning that says it's getting pretty weak. So anyway, Addie says, I'm doing Facebook currently, less than 12 hours. I'm already chatting with four men, trying to weed out a few before I decide to meet any. Awesome. That's terrific. And and Facebook is another place. I was on Facebook a little bit, and that is a free site. And again, as with anything free, just be careful. And there were I met a couple of great people, on a couple of great women on Facebook, Facebook dating. And I'm just waiting for a time when Mark Zuckerberg decides to monetize that, because I'm sure at some point he will. So if he hasn't already, I haven't been on there in quite a while. So, but it was as let's see, let me catch this real quick. Addie says it's free, but it's easy to bypass a lot when they don't have much at all on their profile. Absolutely, and that's Terry and Addie. We talked about this in Dating Academy, or Dating Made Simple Academy, and you have to create a stellar profile. If you're going to use online dating, you have to create a stellar profile. You have to stand out. You have to use good pictures. And sometimes, and your cell phone today can give you such great photos, especially the latest editions of iPhones and some of the Androids. They are awesome. And it doesn't take much. If you can buy inexpensive tripods, or stack some books up in front of your phone and lean your phone against it, and you can take a full-length picture. And you can set a timer on your phone to take the picture, so you can set the phone, click the button, step back, click, it takes your picture, and there you go. You don't have to be a great photographer. You don't have to spend a ton of money on getting professional shots done. And then there's always the selfie. Those are great. Just don't, if you're creating a stellar profile, just make sure you're not taking pictures in the bathroom. Make sure you're checking the background. If you're a messy housekeeper, make sure your house is clean before you take a picture, because guess what? That is going to show up in whatever picture you show. If your kitchen's a mess, if your living room's a mess, it's going to show up in your background, and that is going to turn off a lot of people. Phil says. Phil says, I get these dating sites. It looks like fiction stories, and some of them do, Phil, and I totally admit that, and that's where experience comes into play. It takes time. You're not going to magically become a wizard at online dating overnight. So many people jump online, expect to scroll through a half a dozen or a dozen profiles and find their dream date or their soulmate. It just doesn't happen that way. Odds are it's like anything else. Meeting people in real life. The odds of finding your soulmate on the next person you meet is very, very slim. So you have to take that into consideration, that you do have to meet a lot of people. You have to talk to even more people. You have to start conversations, a ton of conversations online. And only then are you able to start connecting with people. And Addie says, voila, no more bathroom shots when they have the timer. See, there you go. You can take outdoor shots. You can take shots of you on your bicycle or at the bowling alley or whatever it is you like to do. Sailing, dancing, motorcycle riding. And although don't take a picture while you're riding, unless somebody's riding tandem next to you and can get a good shot. But it's be smart about those things. And Steven says, old-fashioned I may be. Well, Steven, there's nothing wrong with being old-fashioned. I kind of highly recommend that, especially for dating values and meeting. Yeah, we don't have to. We can choose to step into the 21st century and do some online dating and or not. But you're still going to communicate in the 21st century, texting and your phone calls. Because you're more than likely going to be using this and not an old rotary phone like I grew up with, that had the 3 or 4 foot cord, and you were tethered to a wall and your entire family could hear the entire conversation with whoever you were trying to ask out. And your family could be brutal. Mine could anyway. So it's, you have to take some things into consideration. We've got new technology, but if you want to stay strictly old school, there's still plenty of relationships to be found outside of online dating. It's if you don't like it, don't do it, because guess what? Your attitude will show through. And if you have a completely negative attitude or a very negative attitude about online dating, all of your responses are going to have a negative tone. And when you start coming through with a negative tone, I don't know about you, but I don't want to start dealing with somebody like that. If somebody starts coming through, with a negative attitude, and we're just getting to know each other, that just signals that you've got a bad attitude towards dating, a bad attitude towards men or women. You're suspicious, and I'm not saying that you can't have your guard up and be watching for red flags. but you have to be open to starting new conversations. You have to be open to getting to know people. And if they're scammers, if they have bad intentions or poor intentions, that'll all pop up pretty quickly. They'll start, for lack of better terms, they'll start grooming you and trying to push you off into chatting offline or in private chat rooms, and where there's a little more protection for them. And when they start doing that, yeah, no, I don't think so. And it takes time. It's like any other skill. You don't just magically sign up on a dating site and have all the skills necessary to navigate that site. It just takes time, and it takes experiences, and you won't have those experiences unless you're there. And again, some of you just are going to say, nope, I'm not going online, and that's okay. It's all a matter of what your preferences are. But just make sure that you're putting in effort, assuming you want a long-term relationship. It's necessary to put in effort elsewhere. And Terry says, it helped me by starting in a meetup group, first to practice talking to strangers, women and men. That's an awesome observation, Terry. Thank you for that. And that's a great way. Get social. If you're not comfortable getting out and talking to strangers, join a social group where you can get out and meet one or two people each time you get together. I always encourage in my meetup group that you get to know one or two people. I like people to move around and not stick in one particular group all night. I like them to meet other people, but get to know somebody a little bit better. Schedule coffee or cocktails with somebody, or a couple of people, or schedule something or plan something to do together outside of the group. But you have to become social. It's like Terry says, it takes practice. Especially if you're not comfortable talking to strangers, and find a group that you have some common interest with, and just step up and say, hey, I'm new here. Talk to the host and say, hey, I'm new here. Can you introduce me to somebody? This is, I'm new to the group and would like to start connecting to people. And a good host is going to say, sure, absolutely. Let me take you over and introduce you to these folks. And assuming they're open and welcoming. And I've been in groups that are very cliquish and very standoffish and very suspicious of new people. And that's not my kind of group. I was part of it. I joined a group for a couple of their meetings in Kansas City, and it was a sport. It was a sport I enjoyed, but they were very cliquish and very standoffish, and I just said, yeah, I'm out. That's not my kind of group. And they really don't embrace you as being a part of the group unless you're willing to you go on their big trips out west to go skiing, or some of the other things. So it's like, I'm not there to compete with what everybody else wants to do. If you're there and want to get to know me, great. If not, I'm okay. I can walk away and go do something else. So anyway, any thoughts or questions there? You guys have been pretty good tonight. You've been pretty good with comments. So that being said, again, I want to go back to creating a stellar profile, and that will create a lot of interest. And when you create a lot of interest in your profile, you're going to get significantly more contact than with a mediocre profile. And the other thing that a stellar profile will do is it will not completely eliminate, but it will help minimize the number of scammers that you see, or that try to contact you. And that's a huge plus, when you're trying to get online and trying to meet people. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distraction here. I've got somebody pulling up outside to hook up to water, and and yeah, I've got a diesel truck running outside, and I happen to have all my doors and windows open because it's such a nice evening. So anyway, I apologize for my distraction. But anyway, there, your stellar profile can minimize a lot of the scam attempts that come your way. And part of a stellar profile is filling out all the questions, being forthright, telling who you are, and writing a decent essay about yourself. The first paragraph should be solely about you, and you should be telling about yourself, so people reading your profile can get a feel or an idea of who you are. And then the second paragraph, and these shouldn't be long paragraphs, because you're only going to have their attention for so long. Very rarely will I go through a 500 or 1,000 word essay on a dating site. They are just way too long, and while they may be detailed, it doesn't tell me enough about them generally to support my interest, or to spur on my interest. So then use good quality pictures. Like I said, your iPhone, your Android can take great pictures today. And they have been able to for quite a few years now. So you don't need a great camera. You don't need a professional photographer to take those pictures, and put in a variety of pictures. And when you're online, you should be refreshing those pictures every 3 to 6 months. Put in new pictures so that you can keep getting new views. And hang on here. Just don't say, if interested in me, just ask. I'm an open book. That's annoying. Well, absolutely. It's not only is it annoying, but it's also secretive. It tells people that it tells people a number of things. Number one, that you're too lazy to write out a profile. It tells people that you may not be confident enough to write out a profile. It tells people that there may be something you have to hide, because you're not willing to share things up front. And Terry says, I met a guy last year, not on Match. My friend met him this year. He's on Bumble, meets women, deletes his profile, and creates a new one several times a month. Wow. So it looks like he's always new on there. He told another friend he has never met anyone from the site. Don't be a liar. Oh, I hate that. And a friend of mine posted on Facebook the other day that about a creepy post on Facebook about sheltering up for the hurricane, and he wanted a woman to shelter up with, and might accept 2 women, but it was just trash. And it's guys like that, Terry, that really that are deceptive online, that change out their profiles, change out their pictures. If you're updating it, great. But if you're deleting your old profile and putting up a new one, and it's bogus information anyway, that just gives the rest of us a bad name. And it's so hard for the good guys to overcome that crap that the creeps want to put out there. It just gives the rest of us a bad name. And so that's why it's so important, especially ladies, for you to be able to recognize quickly the BS and to be able to separate fact from fiction. And there are signals, there are cues, and guys, for those of you that are listening now, or maybe listening to the recording, ladies talk, and they share information. If they're both on dating, or if several are on dating sites, they're all sharing information. And if you're talking to all of them, odds are you're gonna be a topic of conversation. And if you're doing unseemly things and being deceitful, you're going to be found out, and you're going to become a pariah, at least hopefully. And it's just not. Oh, I wish I had a magic wand to just wave over the population and make everybody a class act. But it's we each have our preferences, and I guess whatever's a class act to me may not be to somebody else. So anyway, that is really how Terry's comment is exactly how websites get a bad online dating sites get a bad reputation. And you can report people, but so often their main goal is to raise money, to charge admission, as it were. And to keep those numbers up, they're less likely to kick people off unless it's just an absolute blatant scammer. They want to keep you on board as a paying subscriber, and that not only does that generate revenue for them, it generates numbers. We have X million people on our site at any given time. Yeah, well, you have to judge, and again, you have to. It's the old, what is it? The old Latin saying, caveat emptor. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's buyer beware. And when you go online and create an online profile, and you start looking at profiles, you have to beware. You have to. Hey, Andrea, thanks for joining in. Andrea says, I asked a guy once how would he like his daughter being treated the way he was treating a woman. He didn't like it. Well, and see, that's a great observation, Andrea, and so glad to see you're here. And that's a great observation. Would you treat your daughter, or would you want somebody treating your daughter the way you're treating women? Absolutely not. And that's a real wake-up call. And and that, ladies, that's a great question to ask any guy. If you feel like you're being treated poorly and feeling a bit abused, just ask them, would you want somebody treating your daughter this way? And that's usually a gut check for most guys. So I appreciate that comment, Andrea. That's awesome. But it goes back to again, being buyer beware. You have to do your research. You have to do your study. And just because you get online doesn't mean you have to respond to everybody that writes to you. If you're not seeing a connection, it's oftentimes you're better off just letting a response go, not responding to somebody, as opposed to saying thank you, I just don't feel a connection, I don't find, however you want to phrase it. You open the door up for additional additional conversation by their response, and they'll either do one of two things. They'll be great and say, "Oh, okay, I appreciate your time and your honesty," and move on, or they'll come back and start berating you and telling you what you're missing, or what a terrible person you are for rejecting them, and so oftentimes it's just better not to respond to an email or to a text from somebody online. And Terry says, doesn't mean the first person you match with will be a good match. Absolutely. Try going through the first 20 or 30 or 50 or 100. And that's and so many people don't understand that dating in general is about the numbers. If you're looking for an extraordinary relationship, if you're looking for a soulmate relationship, you can't expect to date 3 or 4 or 5 times and all of a sudden magically come up with your soulmate or Prince Charming or the queen of your life. It just doesn't. The odds of that happening are very slim to none, and it becomes a matter of numbers. There's a great book by Dr. Henry Cloud, and he talks about dating, and he told one of his assistants to go on I think he said 30 dates or 25 dates with 25 different people, and he said each one is going to give you a different perspective on personality, and you're going to start seeing things you like, things you don't like. And he said to even date people that you wouldn't normally go out with. And when she came back at the end of the month, and it may have been 6 months that she had dated, but she came back and she said, I dated somebody, a couple of people that I never in my wildest dreams would have picked for a date, but we went out and we had a great time. And she said, I got to see characteristics of a couple of people that I never would have imagined. She said they weren't a match, but it was a great experience. And she ended up getting through like 20 or 21 or 22 dates, and she ended up finding a guy that she really liked and started dating. So it wasn't, and I think they were talking about long term and settling down together, and it, if I recall correctly, I don't want to. It's been a while since I read the book, but she had a real strong connection to him. I don't know if she called him a soulmate, but it was a real strong connection. But she had to go through 20 or 25 dates before she found this guy. And so you have to understand that it's a long process. And the more active you are, the more proactive you are, the easier it's going to be for you to find your soulmate. And Stephen says, sometimes ask yourself the same questions you ask of someone else. It will surprise you. Oh, that's a good thought. When you're asking somebody about them, how would you respond to that question? That's a good observation, Stephen. And if you can't answer it in a positive way, then you have to think about, well, maybe I need to make some adjustments, or maybe I need to adjust my attitude. So it is work. Dating is not simple, and it's not necessarily pretty. Well, I take that back. Dating can be simple. It's not easy, and so consequently we have to be focused at it. And if you're sitting at home and complaining about, oh, there's nobody to date, I'm not in a relationship, well, how active are you? How proactive are you? Are you going out and being social? Are you joining a meetup group? Are you part of a church group? Are you part of any other? Hey, Dorothy, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. Uh, Addie says, dating, it can be a job for sure. Yes, it can. But it's like I've said before, when you're creating your online profile, you're basically working on an application to, you're applying for a full-time position, to be a lifetime partner with somebody. It's just like, it's even more serious than a job application. A job application, you're only going to be there till 65. After that, you retire and go do something else. A long-term marriage is not like that. This is a lifetime commitment, and I'm assuming that you're looking to date for a long-term relationship and to get married. And when you do that, it you have to be willing to make that lifetime commitment. And when you look at creating an online profile, you have to make it look like you want a lifetime commitment. So it's a matter of mindset. And if you're coming at that as I started at the beginning of the show, if you're coming at that with a negative attitude, like, holy crap, who wants to be around that? And I've read a lot of negative profiles in my day. And Dorothy says, hi, Rick. Hi, everyone. I'm in Connecticut at the moment, September. Nice. Hope you're enjoying some beautiful weather up there. And Terry says, it takes work and time. Absolutely. And the more you do, the sooner you'll find your soulmate. But it does take effort. You can't, when I meet somebody who says, "Oh, I've dated, I've had dated people online and it just never works." Well, how many people have you dated? And I had one woman challenge me on in a conversation on Facebook under one of my posts, and I said, "Well, how many dates have you been on in the last 12 months?" Well, 4. Well, what do you expect? If you've only been on 4 dates, you've not been putting in an effort. And you should be, if you're anywhere close to serious, you got to be dating at least once or twice a month. And you've got to be meeting somebody new all the time, and you have to be willing to strike up a conversation anywhere, anytime, with anyone. And a person that's on here tonight that's really awesome at that is Steven. I don't know that Steven's ever met a stranger. Terry says, some go on 3 dates and give up. Yep, I know. Well, that's what I say, Terry. It's so many people, when I start to talk to them, they think that and they don't put a specific number on it, but they've gone on 3 or 4 or 5 dates. You met 3 or 4 or 5 different guys. Oh, it's just frustrating because there's no good guys out there anymore. Well, yes, because you're only scratching the surface. Oh, you're looking for that needle in a haystack relationship. And don't expect to pull off 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of straw and magically find that needle. You got to go through a lot of different pull a lot of different straws off that pile before you find that extraordinary relationship. It is time consuming. And it's not rocket science. You just have to be active. You have to be proactive. You have to be, and ladies, this goes for you. And I know some of you are just going to balk at this idea that you shouldn't have to ask a guy on a date. Well, we're in a different time and different societal norms today. And because of the social revolution over the last 50 years, ladies, you have to assume some of that responsibility to ask guys out. And it's just been a cultural shift. And I'm not saying it's right, but it is what it is. And if you're waiting for a guy to ask you out, odds are a lot of times you're going to be sitting at home alone wishing he would call. And you never know. He might be sitting at home wishing you would call. Or maybe he's out enjoying himself like you should be. Find friends to go out and do things with. And when you're out doing things with friends, you can meet other people. And again, learn to have a conversation, strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, anytime. Addie says, times they are a changing. Yep, women may have to step up and step up to the plate. Absolutely. And again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with the societal shift, but it is what it is. And if you want to play the game, you're going to have to adapt, and at least to be successful. And so don't. And again, I know there are going to be those of you out there that just say absolutely not. And that's okay. But then you have to accept the fact that you're going to be dateless most of the time, or a lot of the time. And you can, it doesn't necessarily need to, and this is for the ladies, it doesn't necessarily need to be an overt, hey John, would you like to go out this weekend? Would you like to go out for dinner? Would you like to go for coffee and cocktails? You could be having a conversation with someone and say, hey John, I'm enjoying our conversation. I'd like to continue this another time. Would you like to join me for coffee or cocktails, and we can continue the conversation? And he'll say yay or nay, and go from there. Or if you're someplace and say, hey Stephen, I'm going for coffee, or hey Addie, I'm going for coffee after church today. Would you like to join me? And it's just, if you're committing yourself to already doing something, and you're just inviting them along, and it's not a date. It's just, hey, let's continue the conversation. I'm going for coffee. Would you like to join me? Or I'm going for cocktails. Would you like to join me? And so it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be this big production. So again, for the third or fourth time, it's, be ready to strike up a conversation anywhere, anytime, with anyone. And you'd be surprised where these conversations might lead. I've had struck up a lot of conversations with a lot of women that have led absolutely nowhere. But they were fun conversations, and we both enjoyed it because we end up laughing and chuckling, and rarely, on occasion I'll get a phone number. On occasion, I'll have somebody join me for coffee or cocktails, and it's just a fine time. Most of the time they're not going to lead anywhere, but you can find out who this person is. If you're attracted to them, you can find out how much they have in common with you, or you have in common with them. And the odds are that it may be a one and done, or you might get a couple of dates out of it and discover, this isn't quite what I expected and what I signed up for. So let's move on and start over. Terry says, I challenged the women in my local singles group that September is the take a man on a date month, and several took the challenge. Awesome. You're awesome, Terry. See, and it's little things like that. Challenge your friends to your lady friends or your guy friends to ask somebody out, or okay, Dorothy, glad you're back. And Dorothy had to plug her phone in, so she finally came back. Anyway, there are so many fun things, and the important part is to make it fun. Don't make it a chore. Don't make it don't necessarily make it such a big deal. Again, ladies, don't, and especially for those of you not here live that are watching this later, it's okay. Societal norms have changed, and it's okay to ask a guy out. Again, just, it can be simple. Don't don't plan a big dinner. In fact, if you're going to ask somebody out for the first time or try to get together with somebody for the first time, just make it coffee or cocktails. And guys, the same thing for you. Don't plan this big elaborate date. Don't plan it. And ladies, I know there are some of you out there that just have to be wined and dined and have all this, have him plan this big elaborate date and all these fun things. Well, unless he's very well off, very wealthy, that becomes very expensive. And you don't necessarily understand how expensive that can be, especially if it's a one and done date. You got to have a little consideration for the guy and, to say, yeah, coffee or cocktails. Let's get to, and if you set it up properly, if you go out for coffee, it might lead to lunch or it might lead to dinner. Same thing with cocktails. If you especially on a weekend, you start at 4 or 5, and if you have a good time, you can say, hey, you want to grab some dinner? You want to grab a show? You can build. You can build on. You can build on a whole lot of things. So anyway, Addie, I'll see you. It's time to wrap it up anyway. I'll see you next week. And Terry says, I'm going to pop this up here real quick. Terry says, I always suggest coffee. And I love that. That's awesome. And it's easy to do. If they want to go, great. If not, okay. So it's very simple, unintrusive, and you can always build on it from there. And if it's a bad date, just if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're done. You can bail and say, this wasn't what I expected, so let's move on. So that's the other option. You have a fast out. You're not stuck with somebody for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, for a fancy dinner. And Dorothy says, just meet and greet in public. It's new to both of you. There shouldn't be any expectations when you're meeting for the first time. Absolutely. And too many people have these grand expectations. Like I said, and I've talked to so many, and ladies, forgive me, but this is more of a woman thing that some of you just got to have this grand, he's got to show that he really wants me, and he's got to plan I got to see how creative he can be. And yeah, well, how long is that going to last? And when he stops having the ability to create these fantastic dates for you, then how much interest are you going to have? And so when you pile on such a huge expectation up front, it's it's an unreal expectation for that to last much more than 1 or 2 dates. Hey, Stephen, thanks for joining in. I'll talk to you soon. And Geneva says, well, I met a fella finally. Our schedules aligned so we could go out on a date. Literally, our date lasted through the night. Tons of fun. It took several silly pictures along the way, etc. Then, next day, I posted our picture on Facebook. Him and I aren't Facebook friends. However, I just simply said I had a great date. My aunt chimed in saying he looked familiar, so she messaged me offline and said last year he was dating one of her friends. No biggie. Whatever. So then I said something to him. And what happened after that? You can't leave us hanging there. Huh. And Dorothy says, and a little funny that for anyone to think of that. Yeah, it's whenever and yeah, we'll have to get into social media next week. But I touched on social media a week or so ago, and it's so easy to get all caught up in social media and Geneva. I don't know what what the if there was a problem that your aunt thought there would be. But we all have dating lives. And I mean, assuming he's not still dating her friend, then it should be okay. Unless she had some dirt on him, or something that was negative. Yeah, okay. So he's dated a few people. Ultimately that's going to happen. You're going to run into somebody that has dated somebody or dated one of your friends, or dated a relative, and it's if you get out there often enough, and depending on your locality, your locale, it's you run into that possibility. And even in Kansas City, it's 2 million people, and I still have run into people that said, "Oh, I heard you were over here," because our circles intertwine. So anyway, Dorothy says, all the superficial expectations are a bit overwhelming for the first date. Absolutely, and that's what I was trying to say is, keep it simple. You can't get to know somebody when you're on a big fancy dinner, or in a show, or going to the movies, the theater. Geneva says he asked me to tell my aunt not to tell his ex-girlfriends he was out with me. Well, that's probably a smart move. Because his ex owed him money, and more than likely, he wouldn't get it if she knew. Well, and that goes down a whole different rabbit hole, and that goes to social media, and even talking out of, as they used to say, talking out of school. And it's a problem that some people can create problems for you, just by sharing information, or talking to other people, and say, "Oh, Geneva was out with so and so," and it can create waves. And that's, for me personally, and I've had this conversation with a number of people. I don't tell anybody about who I'm dating. I don't even tell my daughter who I'm dating at the time, unless I see some great potential in that relationship. And in the 12 years I've been divorced, my daughter has met one person that I've dated that I thought we had great possibilities. One person in 12 years. And so, that's why I'm so, and that's me. I'm not quick to share much about my personal life, because that's the way I grew up. Is you keep personal things personal, and there are so many outside distractions right now that can destroy, or I wanted to use the term grenade, a relationship. It just throws a grenade in, it blows everything up, and it for no good reason. Just because people want to talk. And Phil says, offer to go volunteer on your date to help the community. That's a nice idea. And I would use that as a second or third date. I would still do the coffee or cocktails up front, because when you're volunteering, you may get split up. You're doing something great for the community, but you don't get to spend a lot of time getting to know somebody. And that's why I don't like going out for big quiet, big dinners in fancy restaurants with dim lights, and because it's so often hard to hear. And if you take somebody to a movie, hey, would you like to go to a movie? You don't get to know anybody in a movie. Save the movie for a few dates down the road. There says, I don't share my dates with many, and never social media. Awesome. And Geneva says, oh my God, I had to tell my family because it was 2 a.m. We were riding four-wheelers, etc. at my family, and my family was worried and coming after me. They have me on Life 360. Well, you gotta. There are some things that you do need to share if you're out doing stuff at 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, you probably need to say you're on a date, but that's all. And I know for ladies, it's different for you than for guys. We can go out, and there are going to be exceptions, in like Geneva, you can have a really, really good first date, long first date. One of my, and it was really a good first date, but it was a 3-day date. She and I had started talking on the phone, and I was living in Kansas City. She was living in Minneapolis, and we talked enough. She invited me up, and we ended up spending 3 days together. And it was awesome. It was a long weekend. It was a 4th of July weekend. It was just fabulous. It didn't work out, but it was still a good time. But we still had plenty of quiet time where we could talk and get to know each other. There were some festivities, but anyway, I digress. We're getting well past an hour here, and Geneva, thanks for sharing. Thanks for joining us today. Dorothy, thanks for being here. Phil, Terry, Addie, Stephen. I think you guys are gone already. And let's see who else here. I think that's I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Um, and I apologize, but thank you all for joining in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and have a great and blessed week. If you have any subjects for next week, give me a shout, and we'll go from there. And I will be live in Kansas City. I'll still be in my my little my tiny little studio in my RV. But I will be back next Monday from Kansas City, and I'll for those of you in the Kansas City area, hope to see you at my meetup, Kansas City Singles Mingle. Will be at Paul and Jack's in the Northland. And in the meantime, have a great and blessed week, everyone. I love you guys, and see you next Monday for Monday Mastery.